Hi, I have in front of me here a ceiling mounted TV bracket. It's designed to suspend TVs between the size of 35 or 36 inches up to 65 inches from a ceiling above. So to that extent it's a sort of a relatively niche product, because normally obviously we're mounting TVs directly onto a wall. Typical applications of this would be in nightclubs, bookies, pubs, and some residential setups as well, where it's more convenient to mount a TV from directly above. So let's just have a look at how this comes and the various parts, and we'll give a quick overview of how to assemble this. So we can see here on the actual outer presentation box this comes in, we have a representation here of what it would look like. So just out of view is where it's actually bolted onto the ceiling. We run this pillar down here, and what we have then is a bracket that's mounted onto it, and we have two brackets, this and this, that are mounted onto the TV and clip into position and are locked into position there. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll just move quickly through what makes up this kit here. So we'll just start over on this side here. This is the actual bracket. Will say that we would put on the base of the pole and would be used for suspending the brackets on the back of the TV. And when we go to mount this, we can actually see there's an angle here just pointing upwards. Okay, I'll go into more detail on this in a few moments. We have an instruction manual here, just gives a quick overview of how it's to go and a quick list of what components should be found here. We have a range of washers and bolts here, which depending on the size and whether we're using spacer, size of the TV or whether we're using spacers, will be used for mounting these brackets that we see in front of me here onto the back of the TV to allow it to be suspended off this bracket that's on the pole. We have washers here, plugs and screws. Okay, so that's very important to us because we want to securely mount this directly onto a ceiling, and obviously we want to be using a firm background such as a concrete, etc. to go with it. We also have this bolt, which I'll come back to at a later point in the video, but that's basically used for bolting the pillar onto the main bracket here. So we have these two angle brackets here, which we'll use and bolt onto the back of the TV, and then we have the pillar itself, which is probably the main part of the event. So we'll start off with that. I'm just going to move the other items out of the way at this point, and slide everything down here, and we'll just talk about this pillar. So if we come along here and we see there's a base here on it, and this is what will be bolted onto the ceiling, and from here I'll rotate this over. We have a hole in the center of the pole itself, and we have a little rubber bone here, which is just to stop cables being snagged. So we can run cables internally, and they'll just pop out here at the bottom of the pole. The default length on it here is around 75, 80 centimeters, but we can extend it out all the way out to about 1.3 meters by simply coming along, loosening off this bolt, which I'll just quickly demonstrate here. And we just slide it along here, and we can see we have it in increments of about 100 millimeters or so. So it extends right out, and it's able to add on about an extra 50 millimeters in the overall length of it. Okay, so we just line these holes back up again. Hopefully we'll be able to reasonably straightforwardly just bolt this back through. This is easy to do, but not always easy to do on video. Right, so we have that mounted like that, and on the bottom of it we have this very strong bracket, which will be used to bolting on to the bracket that's over here. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate now. So remember, we need this pointing upwards, and the reason that it can get a little bit confusing here is, remember, the bracket here is going to be suspended from above, and we want the arrows after that point to be aiming upwards like that. So what we'll do is we just push this over here, and we'd use the bolts that I showed earlier just to bolt directly through here. So you can just see at this point here, we'd bolt the two together, shove the bolt through, put on the washers and the locking nut, and lock it into position. So I'm actually going to move this pillar out of the way at this point, and we'll move on to the next part here, which is the actual the bracket here that we have. How will we come along and mount the television and attach it to this? Well, what we have is the following brackets. There's two of them, and we can see there's little hooks on them, and the hooks here will actually come along and hook directly onto the bracket here, which you can see, and you can see it slides along here. And what we have below here is we would use a Phillips screwdriver to screw this in and lock this into position to stop it sliding beyond a certain point. So we're just trying to get it long enough to get past the lip here, so we just can't force it upwards and off, okay? And that's obviously a good safety mechanism on it. In terms of, there's only a lip on the top, not on the bottom, so we'll repeat this on both sides and we'll just slide it along. But before we actually attach it, what we would normally do is we would mount this onto the back of the TV. So what I'm going to quickly do now is just demonstrate and give a quick discussion on the VESA standard. I just might show one or two features of this here. You can see we have a locking mechanism here where we can actually adjust this and adjust the angle on it, so we can push it forward and pull it back. So we actually have a tilt angle we can achieve with this of 12 degrees up or down. Normally obviously we'll be tilted downwards on it. That gives a better understanding of it. And what we're going to do here is, I'm just going to move this TV into position. So this TV here has a standard, it's a 39-inch LED TV. It has a VESA standard of 200, and what we mean by 200 is that the holes are centered 200 apart, and we call it a 200 by 200 TV because it's both sidewards and downwards, it's 200. So you could have different spacing on things. So what we would do at this point in time is we would actually come along and we could line this up here, and we could use our washers and our bolts, line it up and bolt it in here. So we can see, because of the slotted nature of it, it'll in reality cover almost any VESA standard, simply because it's covering a whole range here. And we could use the spacers at that point and the longer bolts to actually step out the bracket away from the TV. And once we have this mounted fully onto it, we can imagine then that we'd simply pick up the TV, move it over and drop it onto the bracket that I just showed. I'm just going to move this TV back out of the way at this point. So we can see anyway, the overall amount of assembly work to do in it is very, very limited, simply because the component parts of it are almost fully pre-assembled before we start the job on it. Now, it sits really nice with the full range of TV brackets we have. This is something that we've been requested on a number of occasions of stock, and that's why we've added it to our range. The general build quality in this, I find, is very, very good. And in reality, the TV range that's going to cover up to 65 inch, that's really as big as people are going to be mounting in these circumstances. So it's a really good bracket, and that's it, an overview of the ceiling mounted TV bracket covering TVs from 36 up to 65 inches.